Welcome, everyone. This is November 15, the meeting of the full Faculty Senate. We're at Darden, room 120. For those of you who are in the Zoom today, we're going to walk to the Kimpton lobby on or before 4 p.m. and have a social gathering there. For those of you in the room, please join at the Kimpton, and there's also coffee and snacks in the back of the room. You can pick those up anytime. So we have an agenda today that begins with addressed by President Ryan and Provost Baucom, and we understand President Ryan's schedule allows him to be here for 30 minutes, not more, and then Provost Baucom will follow that, and you see the agenda that was mailed to you, and we'll be back in with the minutes and the welcome after we hear from our guests today. Thank you very much. President Ryan.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
So, saying it's an address, you should lower your expectations. I'll give you a few updates, and then happy to take any questions you have about either the updates themselves or anything else. First, thinking about the election, and I'm sure you're having conversations in your schools about it. What we are trying to do is assess all of the areas that might be impacted based on things that have been said during the campaign. And so the list I have so far, which is probably incomplete, but and some of these have sub-issues which I won't go through, but immigration, deportation, changes to priorities for research funding, changes to accreditation, potential tax on endowments, potential abolishment of the Department of Education. Again, these are all things that have been said. Restrictions on visas for international students or perhaps international faculty, changes to loan policies and financial aid, and a host of changes to access to healthcare. It's a little bit hard to plan, obviously, because you don't know what is going to be translated from a campaign into actually governing. So what we are trying to do is assess the likelihood and the mechanisms by which these changes could occur, which are related to each other. So thinking about what can be done by executive order, what requires congressional approval, what would happen in the regulatory sphere, and then thinking about how can we either prepare or respond. So some of that is understanding the intricacies of visas and the like, and at the very least, reaching out to people who might be affected to make sure that they understand what their rights are and what the university can and can't do. I will say on a lot of these issues, this will not be, if changes do occur, it will certainly not be limited to UVA. And there are a number of higher ed associations, including the AAU and ACE, that will absolutely be involved in any conversations or policy changes around, especially around topics like research funding. And I'm happy to take questions about this, but that's our plan. And again, you know, it's useful to go through some scenario planning, but you could have an endless amount of scenario planning. And so we're trying to figure out what are the things that are most important for us to focus on, what are the things that are most in our control in terms of what we might be able to do. Second update, we are still planning to do a review of what happened on May 4th and the days leading up to it. We're still finalizing the details, and I need to have a conversation with the board and go through the details with them. And that will happen at the December board meeting, which is the first week in December, and I should be able to report back after that. I don't want to get ahead of the board. One thing, Jim had asked me to bring up potential topics for you all to discuss, and one thing that I would love your feedback on, or to participate in a conversation, is about the topic of institutional neutrality or institutional restraint. So we had a group earlier this year, actually started last spring, develop a statement around institutional statement. So, I mean, it sounds like classic bureaucracy, a statement about statements, but that's essentially what it is. And the gist of it is that the university should not weigh in on political or social issues that don't have anything to do with the mission of the school or the values of the school. And the justifications for that. One of them being the idea that was first articulated in the Calvin report, which really set off this idea of institutional neutrality, that the university should be the home to the critic and not the critic itself. And that if the university takes positions, it might stifle free speech rather than encourage it. A couple of things. One, I think it would be useful to get the views of either just individual senators or the Senate itself about this idea. It's not a policy, it's just a statement of principle. But also there's a line or two in there about deans and department chairs should also consider the same thing. And that's where I think it would be really useful to have a conversation with the faculty senate for this reason. I was at an AAU conference a couple of weeks ago, and the presidents or the chancellor of Vanderbilt and the president of Princeton had a conversation about what was titled the institutional neutrality versus institutional restraint. And I actually don't think that is much of a difference. It's a difference of degree rather than kind, and really is sort of how little are you going to say? And the real difference was, are you only going to talk about something that directly impacts or threatens your mission, or might you also talk about something that threatens your values? Obviously, if you think about values, it's a broader array. But the justification, and the conversation was mostly about presidents or chancellors talking, and the justification is one that you hear all the time, that, well, if the president takes a position on an issue, it's going to chill speech. And I raised my hand and I said, I just have to question the empirical assumptions there, because I don't feel like if I took a position at UVA, it's really going to stifle debate. But I can see actually how a department chair who has untenured faculty, who is integral to that person's advancement, if the department chair takes a strong position and you're an untenured faculty member in that department, you might actually be reluctant. So if you are interested and there's time in the agenda at some point, I think it would be a useful conversation for this body to have. And and I can see pros and cons of it. The last thing I'll say on this is one part of the statement around principles, which I really encourage them to think about, was institutional neutrality or institutional restraint doesn't mean silence. Because, the odd thing about updating or transporting the Calvin report to 2024 is that when the Calvin report was issued in the late 60s, the channels of communication for presidents or universities were obviously much different than the channels today. And given that most presidents, myself included, post on social media about everything from a football game to our dogs at an open house, if something cataclysmic happens in the world and then there's complete silence, it seems a little jarring and like you're going out of your way. And so the statement emphasizes that there's nothing wrong with expressing empathy and there's nothing wrong with directing students to resources if they want to learn more about if it's a conflict, think about the conflict in the Middle East. So it's not that anytime something happens in the world that people are talking about, if it's not related to UVA's mission or values, you can't say anything, but it's directing it to expressing sympathy for those who are affected and pointing people to resources, either mental health resources or academic resources. But like I said, I think, and I'd be happy to participate in that conversation. Last update, which I'll just do as briefly as I can. We have an expert here in Scott Ballenger, which is the future of college athletics. I could talk for like 3 or 4 hours about this, but I'll be just brief, just so you understand if you haven't been following this. So there have been a lot of changes in college athletics. There are bigger changes on the horizon, and they're the result of what is called the House litigation, which people confuse with the House of Representatives, but House is the named party in one of the suits. There are antitrust suits, which all of these suits lately have been. And there is a preliminary settlement that is likely to be approved in April. And the 3 big components are, 1, revenue sharing. So part of the settlement is the ability, not the requirement, but the ability that universities can share revenue up to a certain percentage of overall revenue, which, when you do the math, means that a school like UVA can share around $20 million a year with student athletes directly. There are no rules about who is supposed to receive the funds, and that's up to the schools. And again, there's no requirement, but obviously the assumption is that schools, in order to be competitive, are going to at least share some revenue. The second point is that scholarship limits, which currently exist, would be changed to roster limits. So right now, and I had no idea this was the case until I became president, different sports have a different number of scholarships that they're allowed to award. So the football team can award up to 85 scholarships. Soccer can award 7 or 8. Is it different for men and women?
Mm-hmm.
So you look across all these sports, and it's hard to understand exactly where they came up with these numbers. But most sports cannot offer every student athlete a full scholarship. That is going to change. You can have roster limits, meaning that you can decide that there should only be 25 athletes on the soccer team, but you could give every single one of those a scholarship. The reason why that's important, obviously, is it almost doubles the number of scholarships that UVA could give, which adds to the price tag if you wanted to do this. The third piece of the puzzle, which I think is still the one that is the murkiest and may end up determining whether this helps or not, is third-party NIL payments are still allowed, but they're supposed to be more regulated. So the original idea behind NIL was that there would be an exchange of goods and services, and what was paid for those goods or services would be basically market-based. That is not really the system that exists right now, and the idea is that it would return to the original idea of NIL. So it wouldn't be precluding, say, a car dealership paying Kim Aquaviva to be their spokesperson, because you all are entitled to NIL as well. You don't just have to be a student athlete, but pay a fair market value. So that raises the question of, what do universities do? And Scott has been leading a group at UVA trying to figure out what is the best response. And I will tell you, we are not there yet in terms of figuring it out. The 2 principles that I think are most relevant to this group is, 1, we would like to stay competitive in sports. We think athletics are important to UVA, and as an athletics task force pointed out in 1970, if you're going to have an athletics program, it's better to have a good one than a bad one, which seems sort of obvious, but it's sort of profound if you think about it. It is not yet clear what it's going to take to stay competitive. So we are thinking about, okay, how can we find the resources necessary to stay competitive, whatever that amount may be. And I think it's going to take a little while for the dust to settle here. The other principle I will tell you, and I think is relevant to this group, we are not going to starve academics to feed athletics. So we're looking for efficiencies in the athletics department, efficiencies in our administrative units, and philanthropy, and are going to try to cobble enough together that we can continue to stay competitive, which is based on what the market is going to be. And right now the market is fairly opaque. And like I said, I think the dust will start to settle over the next few years. I also think that this is probably going to get worse before it gets better. I mean, it's a little bit of the Wild West right now, and I don't think we're anywhere near equilibrium. So happy to take questions on any of those topics or anything else in your mind. Yeah.
In the executive committee meeting 2 weeks ago, we talked about this issue directly. One of the things that was surfaced is that an idea apparently that's been floated, and I'd love you to comment on it. It's a real idea and then what your position on it is that currently students who are in our programs, like at Baton, a grad student or an undergrad student comes into our program. If they're out of state, the athletic department pays the out-of-state tuition, which is substantially more than the in-state tuition.
Yeah.
And like any other student at the University of Virginia, an in-state tuition gets you an in-state residency gets you an in-state tuition. And the idea was that one of the ways it's been floated to close that gap is to treat athletic students differently than every other kind of student at the university and say, actually, we're going to call those in-state people and functionally transfer dollars from units to the athletic department. I understand you could craft the language to make it sound like it's not that way, but in practice, that's moving real dollars away from each of our units.
Yeah.
Can you comment about whether that's actively being considered and how you think about the equity components?
Yeah. I would say until recently it was being actively considered.
Okay.
But not likely to pursue. So there's legislation in North Carolina where any student receiving a full scholarship could be treated as an in-state student rather than an out-of-state student. And we had been talking about could we follow that model for a host of reasons. I mean, we still haven't reached a final decision, but I'm comfortable saying for a host of reasons, I don't think we're going to go down that path. Yeah.
So you gave a very pithy statement about why it's better to have a good athletic program than a bad one. But you also simply said we would like to stay competitive. Has there been any serious consideration of the possibility that we would scale down our athletics or simply not do certain sports, or it's just going to become, said it's the Wild West, there may not be winners? What if college athletics is no longer a viable thing? I mean, have you guys been discussing that?
We have been talking about every option imaginable, and I would say that this is something that we're going to have to continually reassess. So the point of saying we want to stay competitive now, and I think it's about staying competitive and also staying true to your values. Right now, it's so cloudy that it doesn't make sense to me to just throw in the towel and say, we're going to no longer try to compete at the highest level in all the sports that we compete in. But there may come a time where we have no choice other than to make hard decisions about what we're going to do in college athletics. It's just too early, and it doesn't seem wise to me, given the uncertainty, to just say, we're done.
Brian Pusser has a hand raised. Would you unmute Brian, or is it possible to unmute him from?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Thank you. Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you, President Ryan. Thanks for being here. To the point about intercollegiate athletics, I hope that the committee will take into account the fact that the changes that are taking place in intercollegiate athletics are not like an asteroid hitting the Earth. They are the result of a long series of decisions made and decision not made by presidents of universities across the United States that perpetuated what many people feel is a very unjust system for many years, and which legislation and the courts have now agreed has been an unjust situation. So I hope the committee will begin with a review of the kind of decision-making, the norms and beliefs that we hold that put us in this situation, that have caused us to pay damages to student athletes under the House settlement for things we did in the past, and that have caused us to be part and parcel of a system that will be looked back upon, I think, as having been very much on the wrong side of history with regard to the rights of student athletes and with regard to antitrust and so many things. So how are we going to be better rather than trying to compete with more of the same kinds of decision-making, more of the same kind of understandings and norms that brought us to this pass? It wasn't put on us. It was decided by us through the leadership of the various Power 5 conferences in particular.
Yeah. Well, I guess every school would like to say it's exceptional, but I think UVA is exceptional in this regard. I think that UVA, with respect to student athletes, has treated them as both students and athletes, and has taken seriously that in exchange for participating in athletics, students are getting, often on a full scholarship, a terrific education. And I think that our coaches have taken seriously the idea that they are trying not just to win, but to develop student athletes. And I think part of the difficulty now with the current situation, which you're describing as a remedy, is that coaches like Tony Bennett no longer feel like he has the opportunity to develop student athletes as the way that he would like. He takes very seriously, just like other coaches do, that their task is not just to win on the court or on the field, but to develop their students, not just for classes, but for life. And so, you know, some would say, yeah, you had this coming. Some would say, well, the cure might be worse than the disease in some respects. There are some real costs to this new regime, and one of them is it's driving away people like Tony Bennett from college sports. Yeah.
So much of athletics since the 70s has been associated with kind of creating that equality for women's sports.
Yeah.
And, you know, like I said, the scholarships for women oftentimes are more just to try to equalize the vast number for football. How does the roster size not just start to cull the women's sports that don't get as much, TV contracts or number of fans and things like that?
So, it's less to do with the roster size and more to do with the revenue share. And by that I mean, so Title IX, which is about gender equity in athletics, among other things, focuses on things like scholarships and are you offering roughly the same in scholarships. One of the things about this settlement is that there are no Title IX regulations about the revenue sharing. And so that's an issue for each school to determine. Like, how do you decide how to distribute? If you're going to distribute share revenue, how do you do it in an equitable way? And so one of the things is to think about what are the principles that are going to guide distributing revenue and maintaining equity across women's and men's sports. It has to be part of the conversation.
Eve?
I'm sorry, I actually need a clarification about the third point, how the possibility of sponsorships, like, what's the mechanism there that impacts us? It
doesn't really impact us at all, except
you're
about,
just listing
except about
Student
I
state.
call competitive equilibrium. So if you didn't have the third part, if NIL payments were not allowed, you might think, well, this at least has the potential to put schools on an even footing because there's a cap on revenue distribution. So every school is going to be able to distribute up to a certain amount. Now, not every school is going to be able to do that, so it's not perfect, but at least you can't go above that. Once you introduce the idea that, well, third parties can still enter into NIL deals with individual student athletes, that then creates inequality depending on, are you going to have alums or local business people who are willing to pay student athletes for services.
During recruitment, you'd sort of make that part of the offer. And you get this job where you get to promote this car and this guy will pay.
And I can't remember the details about when you can talk about it, but yes. And so you can see how if that is tightly regulated, it probably will not turn into a big deal in terms of creating inequalities, because some schools are going to have plenty of people who say, I'm happy to pay $100,000 for this quarterback to show up for 1 hour, and other schools won't. But if that's not, so if it is tightly regulated, this system has a chance of creating a slightly more even playing field. If it's not tightly regulated, it's going to just recreate the problems that face college athletics right now. Yeah.
What would be tightly regulated?
That's a really good question. Still to be determined.
Jim, your office is very effective when communicating when you travel to meet alumni in New York and others. And does the Senate need to understand about alumni's input to governance? What through the board, through your administration, even through the faculty? How are we engaging with the alumni?
I'm not sure I totally understand the question.
I'm thinking, what do you do in New York? Shake the hands? Are they giving tactical advice or shaping the university's future? How are they participating?
Well, one of the benefits of this job is I get so much free advice from so many entities. So yes, I do get advice. But these events that I've been going to in New York and Richmond and Boston and just last night in DC are really anyone who's an alum is invited. So last night there were, 450 alums at the Museum of American History, and I gave a talk and then had a conversation with Peter Grant, who is the chair of the campaign committee. So it's really it's an update to them. That's about it. And then beforehand I talked to people who are there who are alums or parents. It's mostly most of the people who come, not surprisingly, are pretty happy. Every now and then someone who's super grumpy comes, but most of the people who come are pretty happy. So they're talking about their experience and how much they love UVA. It's actually a really sweet thing.
Thank you for what you're doing in that.
Sure, yeah. No, it's a good thing to meet with alums and parents. Yeah.
You mentioned that NIL funds could be, we as faculty could be eligible for NIL.
I don't know whether that's how you say it. Don't take my word for it.
I'll show up for an hour for 100,000.
I'll do it for half that.
The question truly is, you have to think about conflict of interest issues with if faculty are eligible. I wouldn't go out and promote a certain hearing aid. I'm a hearing doctor, so accepting money to go out and promote a hearing aid, I think there are some serious conflict of interest issues that we'd have to navigate if faculty were to accept NIL funds.
Yeah, so Ian has his hand up, but I think it says don't say anything. But I'm going to try something. Ian, I think part of the reason that NIL began is that student athletes were being treated differently from every other student and from faculty, which is to say you do have some freedom to have a business outside of what you do, as long as it doesn't, you're right, as long as it doesn't create a conflict of interest. But there are a number of faculty who create their own businesses who just have to disclose that they are and then sign a form about a conflict of interest. So I wouldn't necessarily call it NIL, but the point is that, and this is to Brian Pusser's point, part of the reason this is all happening is because student athletes were being treated differently from every other student. So other students, if they wanted to go on TikTok and create videos, and I don't know how that economy works, but get paid one way or the other, they could, except student athletes could. And I think that was part of the impetus for this. But you're not as restricted, but Ian's going to tell you what you can't do.
No, Jim's exactly right. And we do have, and so I think there was that inequity among students as a group at the university. All faculty at the university have the same rights. There's time that everyone has for consultation. There is the opportunity, obviously, to commercialize research. There's sort of IP policies. We do have conflict of interest and conflict of commitment policies, and so there's a common normative rule around that to which we are all held. So I think Jim's point is kind of the key one, is that we had a two-class system, that some students could be rewarded financially for effectively their expertise, and others couldn't.
We missed one question. That would be the last one. Professor Patel?
Thank you, Jim and Ian, for coming to talk to us. I'm gonna step back from the question of athletics, which and you know which is really important, and go back to the questions with which you started, which are really important, and also link them in with alums, which I mean I've met many of them in India and love them dearly. And the reason I'm asking this is because the Texas A&M, pressed by the legislature and alums, actually shut down their minor in LGBTQI studies. And given what's on,
LGBTQ.
so I want to know. I mean, you've done a job of thinking about the question of visas, etc., which are absolutely important. I mean, we live and die by those visas, literally as a department. But I think that there is also a question of whether, I think that our curricular offerings are going to be impacted in substantial ways across every discipline, including sciences, which they were many years ago, and they were certainly in 2020. So do you mean, I mean, as you said, we don't know what's coming down the pike, but have you discussed those questions? Because not just because of what comes from Washington, but also pressure from alums.
I'm not sure I heard the whole. Can someone hear?
Jim, I think the main thing was Texas A&M recently closed down their LGBTQ. I can't remember if it was a minor, but there was a program of study, and that was responsive to some pressure that was coming from their equivalent, their system-wide equivalent of their governing board. And I think what Geeta was asking is, have we thought about pressures, external pressures on the university in terms of curricular offerings and our commitment to continue to allow our faculty? I think I know what your answer is going to be, but I think that was Geeta. I believe that was the core of the question.
I would say, okay, but thanks for the question. I would say we haven't talked about it that much because to me the answer is simple, and that we should be making those, academic freedom means that we should be making those decisions internally. Not externally. And I'm sure Ian agrees with me, part of our job is to fiercely protect academic freedom.
Yep.
Thank you very much for being here.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good weekend. Thanks for letting me.
Yeah.
Provost Baucom?
Thank you. Good, thanks. So I would simply say, Geeta, on your question, the curriculum of the university belongs to the faculty of the university, full stop.
That's great to know. Thank you.
Yeah, and we will defend that. I just have a couple of brief updates. I am running a little late, so I'll move through them quickly. Artificial intelligence, how we've been thinking about it, all of us have in many ways. This has been happening at the school level, at the department level, but just a little bit of an update of how we've been thinking about this university-wide. So we've been thinking about developing pan-university strategies and artificial intelligence, related to artificial intelligence in two domains. First, in relationship to research, and you're about to hear from Lori McMahon in a bit. I don't know, Lori, if you were planning to talk about this, but let me start with that. Over the course of the past year, I've been convening an ad hoc advisory group of faculty from across the university. We haven't been able to represent every school because we wanted a group of about 8 or 10, but faculty from Darden, engineering, School of Medicine, data science, the college, education, the VPR's office, a couple of others, to sort of ask the question of whether we wanted to have some form to help coordinate and lift AI efforts. And that's kind of where we've landed. We want to help coordinate and lift, but believe really that the best work is done at the school and the unit level. But within that idea that we might want to have something university-wide, we've been developing an idea for a UVA, an AI at UVA research initiative. And in parallel to that, have been talking to our colleagues at Virginia Tech And we will then subsequently talk to colleagues at other universities across the Commonwealth for what we're thinking of as a Commonwealth Artificial Intelligence initiative or institute. That second one would be a collaboration between universities, loosely modeled on something the state began to fund 5 or 6 years ago called the Cyber Security Initiative. And that provided for a group of universities to work together collectively in research, in workforce development, and in education. We've been thinking about that. We're in early conversations with the state. Virginia Tech is quite interested in partnering with us. Either way, a UVA-focused one or UVA and partners across the Commonwealth, the focus that has emerged from these conversations is to be thinking about responsible AI, and responsible AI as applied both to fundamental AI technology, emerging from data science, from computer science, from multiple other fields, but then thinking about the applications of AI technologies in a series of domain areas. And these are the ones we've begun to think about. Haven't decided, it's not finalized, but what does the responsible use of AI look like in business? And this is in some ways emerging from the fact that the business world, the market world is being radically transformed, business practices, how employees are treated, how products are marketed, how research is done across the market sector. This is external to UVA, but we're also the beneficiaries of a recent extraordinarily generous gift, which ultimately will be in the order of $100 million to the Darden School of Business from Dave and Kathleen Cross, through which we are creating at Darden an institute for the ethical use of AI in business. We've also made significant investments through the COACHE Institute, through our grand challenges, in looking at the impact of AI and what it means to inhabit a democratic society, questions of voting, of security in voting, of surveillance. So AI in business and democracy. We have enormous strengths across the university in thinking about the implications of AI in healthcare. So both fundamental biomedical discovery, but also the delivery and the management of healthcare. There's great expertise in multiple schools, but particularly in the School of Education about AI in education, and how you think about responsible AI use for targeted precision forms of education for individual students. So that's a kind of a frame that is emerging in those conversations, and we'll keep you updated as things emerge. In pursuit of that, I and the deans and Lori have been working together on a series of initiatives to kind of strengthen what we're doing academically. I have, with the president's support, identified 10 new endowed chairs in AI, and we have been working with all the school deans for them to nominate, to recommend searches that we'll be pursuing in AI, and we're very close to being able to move forward on those. The schools across their hiring plans, there are multiple other hires underway. There are between 20 and 30, we think, this year, between the 10 new chairs and what the school's already planning to do. We will also soon be releasing information about a new internal program for faculty at the university, an AI Discovery Fellows program. Playing with the name, it might not end up being called exactly that, but that is for current faculty at the university, either whose research is already deeply grounded in AI methodologies or research on AI, who want to sort of move into an additional or new knowledge field, or for colleagues, I would be an example, I won't be getting one, there'd be a conflict there, but for faculty who don't have expertise, an English professor who might not have worked in these fields, a biologist who might not have worked in these fields, a studio artist who's interested in thinking about the ways in which their creative practice and their scholarship can change. So there's a bundle of things we're planning to do. Brie Gertler, our Vice Dean, as you know, has been leading a concurrent effort to think about AI in pedagogy. Two key things I believe Brie has already talked about with this group, but just as a reminder.
She's coming in December.
Oh,
I'm talking about this.
she's going to talk about them in December, so I'm going to let Brie talk in December about our efforts in AI in pedagogy. A couple of other research updates with thanks to the president, thanks to Lori, thanks to all of the deans, and also with support from my office. We will be relaunching the 3 Cavs program. And so those of you who have been around for a while know about the 3 Cavaliers program. It's an initiative that allows 3 faculty members who need to belong to at least 2 different units to collaborate on a research or creative project of some sort. We'll be giving awards. Lori, are you going to be talking about this later?
I wasn't, so
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, so we're going to be giving awards at sort of 2 different levels, the $80,000 level for a trio of faculty members. Those will be rigorously reviewed applications that come in, and will also be, as in the past round, be giving out a lower financial amount award of $15,000. And that's a really sort of let every flower spring idea. Those actually will be done, and it's been successful. It might sound a little wacky, but we did it by lottery last time. And that's every year. I think there'll be about 15 awards in each category. So this is something we heard from faculty over the course of the last year or so, that faculty had loved this program, and we want to be sure that we're supporting research across domains. Lori has been leading incredible work. I'm sure you will hear more about within her office, so I won't say too much about that, but investments in a range of fields, office-sponsored programs, IRB and others to enhance the faculty and support, the staff support for faculty in those areas. And a final piece just to talk about in terms of our investment in research coming from the Strategic Research Infrastructure Initiative. One of the things we've really wanted to focus on out the gates is bolstering research computing at the university. And that means building up sort of significantly enhanced research computing facilities, capacity, increasing faculty no-cost access to research computing time. The university is planning to build a new data center to support those efforts. So I'm grateful for everyone's input. A couple words about where we are on following through on the recommendations of the Task Force on Religious Diversity and Belonging. We've also been able to identify funding support for 5 new endowed chairs for new faculty hires in broad fields of religious history, culture, politics, religion, thinking about questions of religion and conflict. So I'm grateful that we've been able to identify those funds, and again have been working with the deans to make recommendations on hires that we can pursue, and we'll be launching those soon. I have identified through my office a program fund for the deans to be working with faculty, and we had a good conversation about ways in which the Faculty Senate might help us with this as well, for symposia, seminars, conferences, colloquia, gathering organized by faculty to move this work forward. There's a fund that we will be providing to our arts programs as well, because we really think that the work of the arts is really important in this domain. And the president and I had a really good meeting earlier today with a student group called the Virginia Interfaith Coalition, which is a student CIO that works to bring together students from different religious histories, backgrounds, traditions, and we're doing good work with them. They're a terrific group. We are moving forward on identifying a coordinator in the Office of Equal Opportunity and Civil Rights to help coordinate reports that come in about religious bias or discrimination, to make sure that we are tracking all of those, working with various units across the university. The University Police Department will be designating a victims advocate, and we provided support to the Student Affairs Office to identify a Student Affairs program director, looking at questions of cross-faith support and support for students across communities and others. 2 last things. Scott, I don't know if you're talking today about pre-expression, so I'll turn that to you, but thank you for the work that you've all been doing together on that, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you do. And then maybe the last thing to say is we are in the process of launching 2 new dean searches. So I want to again express my profound thanks to John Unsworth for his years of service as Dean of the Library, and to Nicole Jenkins for her years of service as Dean of McIntyre. We, in fact, have just launched 2 days ago the search for the next Dean of the Library. Stephanie Rowley, Dean of the School of Education, will chair that committee, and I'm grateful for the Faculty Senate. I'm sorry, there are lots of names in my head. Remind me of the, yes,
Robert.
Thank you, Robert. Robert is going to be serving on that committee. And we have made a commitment that going forward, all dean searches will include a member nominated by the Faculty Senate, not chosen by the Provost. So thank you, Robert. We are in the process of pulling together a committee for the search for the next Dean of McIntyre. And again, I believe we might, it's not public yet.
Brian Wright.
Brian Wright. So Brian Wright will be serving on that committee as the representative of the Faculty Senate. So a lot of updates, but I just kind of wanted to go over those. And I can, my apologies, I'm supposed to be back at my office at 3, but I can stay for at least a little bit if there are any questions. Yeah.
I missed the first part of this meeting.
Yeah.
In your
comments you're making. Do we know what the election's gonna do to the university?
Yes. So I can quickly review for you. We don't know precisely, but this is what we're doing. And so I'll just do a brief recap in case anyone missed it. We are taking a look at all of the potential policy, legislative, executive actions that have been proposed over the course of the election or subsequent to the outcome of the election by the incoming administration that might have an impact on higher education, ranging from immigration policy, changes in research priorities, changes potentially in the nature of research funding. There's been a fair amount of discussion about the role of university accreditors, which is a very important matter for us to be looking at. So a range of these. So we're kind of bucking them into a series of areas. We've got our colleagues in our Office of Federal Relations. We have expertise at the university. First, we'll kind of get a sense of what they are. Then what we want to do is within each of those domains, identify what could be accomplished by executive order, meaning what could be a day one decision, what would require regulatory action, and in which agency, and does the agent head have the capacity, what would require legislative action, and what could be accomplished juridically. One, to understand, it also kind of gives you a sense of likelihood and tempo. So we're kind of mapping that now, and then the idea is then to see in each of those areas, where can we be equipping ourselves, there are going to be some areas where the federal government has the capacity to do things that the university doesn't have a clear sense of exactly how we would respond, but that's what we're working on.
Do you think the fact that we have a Republican governor is gonna somehow preserve some of the things, the structures that are currently in place in the state in terms of like the funding and other sort of resources that are like nothing's gonna change really for the?
I'm not anticipating in terms of state funding any significant changes. We are in the process now of the second part of the biennium budget is being set. Those conversations preceded the election. I've had no indication thus far that any of those conversations, any of the kinds of issues that we're working on, among other things, one of our highest priorities is to receive funding for the Center for the Arts, to receive funding for a new building for the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences, and I have not received any sense of change at that state level.
Andy? And then Eve?
Ian, thank you for coming. You talked about several different AI initiatives that are really aimed at people who are on the high end of the scale.
Right.
These super users, Dow chairs, et cetera. You talked about the
fellows,
discovery fellows.
Yeah.
I was on a call with somebody at Harvard this morning, and they were showing me that Harvard has an AI sandbox in which every Harvard faculty member has access to ChatGPT, Claude, and Meta, and Gemini, all in one setting and all the pro subscriptions to it.
Yeah.
And it just looked like a remarkable tool for the average faculty member who's not one of those people who's super techie on that issue.
Yeah.
How does your office think about supporting those, like the vast majority of us who are not super users, but could really benefit from these, rather than having to do individual subscriptions and run it all through our admins and all the mess that is?
That's a good question. And straight up, so right now what all faculty, staff, and students have access to through the university subscription is Microsoft Pilot. That's what we have. We have taken a look at some internal customization of an AI, I forget what it was called, McIntyre. I don't know if McIntyre colleagues would know. We experimented with but it ended up being, the students didn't use it. I'm not sure what, but there was a small internal experiment on maybe building our own. And my sense was that the take-up wasn't worth it. We have done some initial cost analyses. We are a fortunate university. Harvard is an even more fortunate university than we are. And it's super costly. So we have not at this point made a commitment to do more, but it is, look, that's all I'll say. I know what we've got. I know that we've been trying to look at other things. We've been trying to get a sense of how expensive it is. At this point, we don't have a plan, but this is infrastructure.
Eve?
As we think about infrastructure, we've got to be thinking about it. So thanks for mentioning it. Actually be helpful. Maybe you can send a link or something to what Harvard's up to.
Sure.
And Lori, maybe me and Lori together. Yeah. Eve, go ahead, and then I'll need to go in just a minute.
Just very quickly, among the different responsible AI initiatives, is there any attention or resources going toward the fact that AI is a catastrophe for efforts to reverse climate change?
Oh, great point. We have not identified that, at least in these conversations, as like one of the big domain areas, but within the work that we're doing through the Climate Collaborative and our Environment Institute and supporting research in that area, yes, through that. So, but actually, Eve, nominate areas. No, I mean, quite seriously. I mean, we probably shouldn't, as a university, say we're going to do 10 different things at the university-wide level.
It's just that going forward with all these different,
Yeah.
you know, enhancing and
Yeah,
embellishing
yeah,
more and more
absolutely.
AI without looking at the other side, which is real.
The other side is real, and then there's also the very complicated issue. I'm not an expert in this. I'm just sort of know a little bit more than I would if I was just a layperson, because I have to, but I don't know a whole lot more about that. But the relationship between you know, the energy intensive use coming from the data centers that enable us to pursue the AI work, you know, kind of puts universities, not only universities, but universities in a very complicated situation, which the advance of knowledge is also going to be coming sort of the cost of incredibly.
And the state of Virginia is one of the densest locations of
Absolutely.
data centers, and people in Northern Virginia, you know, live with that, so.
Yeah, no, it's a great point, so thanks.
Thank you. Sue, is there a quicker one? Yeah,
Just
that's the
really
last one.
quickly, about the AI, I'm just curious about admissions
Yeah.
and what they're doing with AI,
Yeah.
because there is some data looking at, you know, job applications and reading resumes and things that it doesn't, it categorically takes certain people out, and I was just wondering
Yeah.
if they're using AI on their end to
We are
weed
not,
through.
well, to the best of my knowledge, we are not using AI as a tool in processing admissions. But let me, as always, it's a vast enterprise, and sometimes there are things I'm unaware of, but to the best of my knowledge, but that's a great question, actually, maybe asking Steve Farmer to come and meet with the Senate at some point to talk about that, and the question of how we think about, you know, we have an honor system, and that applies to application
Right.
as well, and so but we're certainly aware culturally, there are students who are using AI to write their essays, so it'd be great, but to the best of my knowledge, we are not using AI as a screening tool. It would run counter, I think, to it. So.
Thank you very much for
Okay,
Well, welcome, everyone. This is back to the regular agenda of our Senate. Jeri and Michael and I are doing our best, along with the Executive Council that meets a week or 2 weeks before this meeting. If you have items for the agenda, please talk with a member of EXCO. It's good to insert those to the Senate agenda by going through the EXCO and or the committees. Jeri, is there any to add in the welcome, or Michael? Please pay attention to our rules, our faculty Senate handbook, and our constitution and bylaws. And it's very important to keep in touch with those. You all were sent the minutes from our October 18 Senate meeting. We already made some clerical typo types of fixes. It didn't change anything of the substance of it. But is there a thought toward approving these minutes from 1 month ago? Yes, Eve?
I just can't help noticing, Dave Nomi isn't a person. I think the person is Nomi Dave.
Yeah, just back.
Is it good?
We'll flip it.
Just flip the.
Yep.
Thank you very much, Eve. Other thoughts about the minutes?
Motion to approve?
Yes. So all in favor of that? Thank you. Opposed? All right, the minutes are approved, and those are archived once per year. They go into the university library for all time. We had a discussion of this School of Medicine motion, resolution 1 month ago. It was subsequently voted online. We discussed it at EXCO. It's in the minutes of EXCO that this motion was approved with the vote of Jeri and Brian Pusser. Do you have remarks about the approval of the resolution?
I think there's just a thought that we needed to mention it here so that it got into these full Senate minutes as well. So there was an online vote. It was approved about 60 voted, I think, was it?
Next slide.
Next slide. There we go. We had, I think, 55 voting yes, 4 abstaining, and 1 voting no. I believe that was the total. So decent turnout, but there are 80-something of us, so we'd love to see a total that is closer to 80 instead. But just wanted to note that this has passed and is now posted on the Faculty Senate website for everyone to see. So just noting it for the minutes. Any questions or comments or anything? Great.
Thank you. That was very good participation in the vote. And our next item is a report from the faculty representative to the board, Michael Kennedy.
Thanks, Jim. Hi, everybody. Good to see you. Thanks for those online. The President Ryan mentioned this, the full board meets on December the 4th and 5th. I will be attending all of the events relative to that. So at this meeting, I believe it's December 15th, I'll have a full report of what transpired at that meeting. I think there'll be a lot of clues if the board is beginning to think about the political climate and things that are happening. So I'll make a full report at that meeting. For now, I have been transmitted another letter from Rachel Sheridan, who is the head of the audit committee, and she has asked me to read this to provide the Senate with an update on the School of Medicine investigation, and here it is. I just need to move that so I can see it. There we go. We have committed to being as transparent with you as possible about the investigation into the allegations raised by a group of UPG employed faculty. On behalf of the Board of Visitors, we wanted to share a brief update as outside independent legal counsel continues this important work. Core to the success of the investigation is ensuring that it is thorough and complete, which takes time. As you are aware, counsel is busy conducting interviews as well as reviewing information. We are not yet in a position to say when the work will be complete, as the timeline of the investigation depends upon the volume of information to review and large number of interviews to conduct, as well as the participation and schedules of those who raise concerns. We instructed the outside firm to follow the facts where they lead, and they are doing so. The board is grateful to those who have given their time and energy to participate thus far. Thank you. We recognize that it may be unsatisfying to hear the investigation remains ongoing, but we can assure you that the Audit, Compliance, and Risk Committee and the broader Board of Visitors view this work as a critical priority. We hope to be in a position to provide further incremental updates in the new year. The board would like to reiterate our steadfast commitment to the university and the community we all serve, as well as our gratitude to this esteemed group for your continued help and support in encouraging participation in the investigation. I don't have any specific more information than that, but I'm happy to answer any questions about the board more broadly, or issues that you would like for me to raise with the board when I am with them in a few weeks' time. Brian.
Hi, Michael. Thank you for your report. Thank you for all your service on behalf of us, all the faculty of the university on the BOV. My question relates to something that I asked President Ryan when we were over in Holloway Hall at our last meeting, which was effectively, do we have a plan, or should we be thinking about the climate in the School of Medicine for the faculty there, for the faculty that came forward while this investigation from Williams and Connolly is being undertaken? And now that it seems it's going to stretch into the new year, we're getting to a very long time in which people who may be feeling some pressure, duress, and so forth. Honestly, I don't know the climate there, But President Ryan said, no, we didn't have anything in the works other than the investigation. And I think that an investigation is important. I think a climate audit or some attention to the climate is useful also. And I wonder if that is something you've heard anything about since, or if there's anyone in the Senate, or maybe we could hear from our senators from the School of Medicine about whether or not there's something the Senate could do to endorse such a climate survey or to endorse some resources being devoted to climate at the School of Medicine while this investigation is going on.
I certainly can't answer that. For my part, there's been nothing, but I see several senators that I know, if anyone. Maite?
Well, I'm pretty sure that the Board of Visitors told anyone who felt like there was ongoing climate issues or retaliation to contact Carolyn Saint, right?
Yes.
So that's certainly something, it's not nothing. There would be an institutional response to any ongoing or new retaliation that was reported. And it should be reported to Carolyn Saint.
But that's different from the question of overall climate,
I just
right? And
wanted
this
to
is,
address the
that's
fact
part of
that
it, is this
nothing-
distinction between what's going on with the Board of Visitors, where they're looking at individual cases, and the climate, which as faculty is actually for the, I would argue for the faculty senate as a whole, for faculty throughout the university, that question of climate broadly, as well as individual cases, is actually something that's really key.
Thanks, Jessica. Brett?
I'll speak. I haven't seen much change in the climate one way or another, but I will tell you that one of the major dissatisfiers appears in that letter are the very rigid and strict rules regarding the ambulatory clinics. It's couched in terms of united on access. In other words, to improve access for patients getting into the medical system. And so there have been very draconian and strict rules surrounding when we have to be in clinic. And on the surface, it is a little disgruntling to have an administrator tell me how to run my practice. I mean, I think that's the overarching theme. However, I've been working with the leadership in the United on Access project to soften some of the rules and to develop better communication with the faculty surrounding this softening of the rules, written a frequently asked questions document. And the School of Medicine faculty senators have been somewhat participatory in this frequently asked questions document that will be circulated soon. So, you know, one of the major dissatisfiers, again, is this United on Access. I think some of the rules are softening around it. I don't know if it's moved the needle at all on the morale and the climate in the School of Medicine. But I think there is some purposeful work going towards trying to make it a little bit easier for the docs. But as I mentioned at the beginning, at the end of the day, for an administrator to tell us how to run our practice and to squeeze more juice out of the orange, you know, is still distressing.
Thank you, Brett. We have a further update from the Provost's office. Brie said there's not more update from her side until December. But Maite, you're going to come soon with the coach, but is there any remark otherwise? Thank you. There was this accommodations activity that
There were a
occurred.
couple of things on the chat.
Yeah, there's.
I don't
things in
know,
the
I couldn't
chat.
read it.
Dana had something on the chat.
Yeah, about that,
We're
about the
we're
last.
losing the agenda as to what the
Okay.
issue is, because it's, I appreciate it, Brad, but if you all would agree, it's not the report from the BOV. So we're a bit in jeopardy of hitting the 4 o'clock. We've got 2 major sections to come. Okay? So this, from the Provost, we're now going to hear from Dr. McMahon, the Executive Vice President for, Vice President for Research. Lori, give me
I've
1
already gotten
second
a
to-
promotion to executive.
Thank you, sounds good.
That's fast.
Michael or anyone, how do I get from one PowerPoint presentation to another?
Click on the bottom. There's this, see that? Nope, see another page.
Because it's covered by the Zoom, we can't see what's what.
Oh, you have to unshare and reshare maybe?
Thank you for helping with that. No, it's
Should I have
good.
sent it earlier? Because I should have.
No, we got Maite sent one. We got that one in. But, let's see here.
Where did you?
It's in the same folder. It was even open a moment ago.
I think it is on
that
the
it?
bottom, isn't it?
Yeah, I
It's
think
just
it
a share.
is. The PowerPoint at the on the bottom, a little orange.
We need to give
3:30?
Maite, 3:30 is good, yes.
3:30, okay. 3:30, I just went through.
Thank you very much.
It's taking me back to all the way to last year.
So can I just,
Thank you.
I can turn this?
Yes, this advances the
You
slide.
can see it online, Kelly?
Okay, awesome.
Kelly did a share.
Thank you all. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. So thanks, Jim, as chair for inviting me. I am gonna try to get through this fast. I have a lot of slides. I tried to put information in there that I thought is on your minds, but I want time for questions, so we'll just see how far we can get. And I hope that I get to come back often and talk to you. So I wanted to just say upfront, it's an honor for me to serve and to be here. And I wanted to introduce myself. So I'm just gonna start at the bottom. I retired from the University of Alabama at Birmingham with 25 years of service. That was my first faculty job. And the truth is I never thought I would leave UAB. I really enjoyed my role there. I had a lot of roles. I developed a brand new neuroscience PhD program. I was director of the Comprehensive Neuroscience Center, which is kind of very, very similar to the Brain Institute here. And the last 6 years, I served as dean of the graduate school. The graduate school there is very large. It makes up a third of the student body. So oversaw about 110, 112 master's and PhD programs, developed new PhD programs in the School of Education and the School of Engineering. It was a fantastic job and actually a job that I didn't really want and got talked into doing it and was so happy that I did. And so I retired with 25 years of service, was recruited to the Medical University of South Carolina as the vice president for research. So I identify as a neuroscientist. I am a passionate neuroscientist. I'm NIH funded. I plan on continuing my research here, but I'm also a passionate educator. And I identify as a faculty member. And so if Ian was in here, maybe he wouldn't like to hear that. But my first thought is a faculty member. So I see you as my peers and my colleagues, and I serve in these leadership roles purely to make things better for faculty and for students. I've taught all kinds of students, undergraduate students, medical students, dental students, optometry students, all kinds of PhD students. I am a passionate educator. My parents were elementary school teachers. And I still think there's a gene for that because teachers run in families. And so I just want you to know who I am and why I'm here. And the why I'm here, I think this is the slide about my research. So I study the brain in rodents. We do electrical recordings. I am obsessed with synapses that happen on these neurons. This is a neuron in the hippocampus that's right here. Without your hippocampus, you can't learn new things. So we study learning and memory. We want to know what goes wrong in disease. So right now we're funded by the National Institute on Aging to try to understand the earliest changes in the brain in Alzheimer's disease in a rat that gets Alzheimer's disease. And we're very passionate about sex differences and why women after menopause have a much greater chance of dementia and Alzheimer's disease. So that's what I do in my lab. And I will be setting up my lab here. Oh, there's spines, the synapses that I'm obsessed with here. And so chance interaction. So probably all of you have read these two books, and in these books, there's chance interaction that changes lives. My chance interaction was last November at the Society for Neuroscience meeting where I ran into Jaideep Kapoor. Some of you in this room probably know Jaideep. He's a neurologist, he's an epilepsy researcher, uses animal models in research, and I've known Jaideep for over 20 years. not super well, but from study section and meetings, and I ran into him at this meeting of 28,000 people last November, and he thought I was still at UAB. We had a conversation, and he said, "Oh, how's UAB?" And I said, "Oh, I'm at Medical University of South Carolina as VPR." And he immediately said, "Oh, you should apply for our VPR job." And I said, "Absolutely no way, I just moved. My lab will not be happy, and the president and the provost won't be happy, and my husband, we just bought a house in Charleston." And lo and behold, here I am. So chance interactions are super important. And what really drew me, so at the meeting, 28,000 people, you're out the meeting all day, got to my hotel room, just thought, oh, I'm gonna see what's going on at UVA, and was blown away. And I was blown away by the 2030 plan. I know you all know about the 2030 plan. When I read it, I'm like, this is amazing. And this, to serve, that's in my core, is to serve. That's how I try to run my lab. That's how I teach my students. That's how I work with my colleagues. I want to serve. And I think it was partly how I was raised, or maybe it's fully how I was raised by my parents, because they were very service oriented. And then I also loved this unending and fearless search for the truth through teaching, research, and healthcare. That just hit me so hard. And I thought, I have to be a part of this. It just mattered to me so much when I read that. So the Office of the Vice President for Research, maybe you all know the role of the Office of the Vice President for Research, but I thought I would just review that for you. So it's the office, and it really is the office of. It's not the VPR, it's not me, it's all of us. It takes all the people to do the good work. So responsible for the strategic vision for research and developing and executing initiatives to accomplish that vision, as well as the various compliance and support areas. So the Office of the Vice President for Research here at UVA and any other major research institution you want to think about has the same job. And it's about serving the community who's trying to do research and making sure that those offices that support researchers run well, run like a well-oiled machine, so that the community can spend all of their time being creative and being curious and generating knowledge. And there's so much federal compliance. So it's our job to monitor the federal compliance and to educate our colleagues so they know what they can do, what they shouldn't do, so that we follow the rules. So that's a really important role. And then I also think one of my big jobs is to help the community think big. Do big things, solve the world's biggest problems. So there's a lot of operations and compliance, but there's also this visionary aspect. So on this slide are all the research support offices that are absolutely critical. And all of these offices exist at other institutions. None of what you see here is unique. Sometimes at some institutions, I don't always report, like environmental health and safety. At my two previous institutions, that unit did not report to the Office of the Vice President for Research. That office reported to facilities. But so research development, we're trying to help our colleagues put in these big grants that are complex and have to read every word on the application. Research compliance, that goes back to my mentioned before, we have to make sure that we're being compliant. Animal care and use, licensing and ventures group. So that's a 501(c), but that reports a kind of dotted line to the Office of the Vice President for Research. And that's how we take the big discoveries that we make, the tools that we develop, the devices, the knowledge that we can protect with a patent. Research security, there's a lot going on there, and more compliance is coming down from the federal government. Research integrity and ethics. So our RIO, every institution that does research has a RIO, a research integrity officer. So Kristen Cheese knew, she started actually the same day I did in June. Sponsored programs, we already mentioned environmental health and safety. Research communications is a new office in the Office of the Vice President for Research. So Gwen Bush, she started in August. She actually worked with me in the VPR office at MUSC. She's super talented. We're building out a team. So one thing that I noticed when I was going through the interview process is there's not enough celebration of the research accomplishments that our colleagues make. And so we're really going to try hard to uplift everything that we're doing so that everyone knows. No secrets. So research excellence changes the world. And so I think about this a lot, know thyself. And to me, to be strategic, one has to know thyself. And so we all need to know thyself, meaning personally, but also UVA. So I've been, in my 5 months here, I've been working through trying to meet lots of people, understand where our research excellence is, understand where we want to go, what our dreams are. And I often feel like my role is to fulfill people's dreams. Every single faculty member has a dream for their career. Every single student has a dream for their career. And I feel like one of my jobs is to make sure that those get realized. So know thyself. I think about that a lot. Research creates new knowledge. So I think about this a lot too. Without research, our current state of knowledge, pick your discipline, it doesn't matter what it is, stays stuck. So if we're not doing research in the arts, if we're not doing research in medicine, if we're not doing research in architecture or engineering or education, our current knowledge gets stuck. And so research is super important to create new knowledge and to change the world. I wanted to mention this too, because this is another thing I think about a lot. Knowing more for knowing more's sake. I led a congressional hearing, I guess almost 2 years ago for the Society for Neuroscience. I just finished a 3-year term as the chair of the Government and Public Affairs Committee for the Society, where I interacted a lot with our federal lawmakers. And I also interacted a lot with leaders at NIH in the field of neuroscience, since my role was with the Society for Neuroscience. And the director of the National Institute of Mental Health said this during the congressional hearing about research, knowing more for knowing more's sake. And so I think about that a lot too, that we just need to generate knowledge. So my job, this is how I view my job. This is just a short list. Serve the research community across grounds in every corner and in every space. So every single faculty member, student who's engaging in research, whatever it is, my job is to serve and to help nourish that and help it grow. Listen carefully to the needs. And so that includes all of you. I need your help. I'm your colleague. I'm your collaborator. So listening, I need to be a problem solver. And so I need to hear what's going on. Yes?
This is great. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
Because, this is all, and I love the enthusiasm and I appreciate it very
Yes.
much, especially the fact that that has not always been the case from the VPR's office. And I'm not speaking of the medical school, which I don't know very much about, but I'm in the School of Architecture. My name is Matthew Joel, and we have a problem with the research sponsored projects in the university.
Yes.
We have a problem, it's a Swiss cheese right now with OSP, with our administration of grants. And
Yes.
it's and there's a lack of communication,
Yes.
I mean, I.
Thank you. Yes,
Are you
yes.
gonna get to that? Because I know you're saying all these great, kind of things that rise in.
I will say, so I have all these points to talk about. Because I know it's on your mind, and it's on my mind. Because like I said, I'm faculty too. I have submitted a grant since I've been here, and there's been some bumps, right? So I said to the provost that one of the big reasons that I wanted to continue my research is so that I am a consumer of the services of the research offices, so I can feel firsthand what those challenges are. And you're absolutely right. And when I came to interview, I heard that loud and clear, and I continued to hear it loud and clear. So my eyes are on that in this year. So what I'm hearing is we need more communications. We need to improve OSP. We need to improve IRB. We need to improve the timeline for setting up contracts, and we need incubator space. So all of those things are on my agenda in my first year. And so I'm hoping that by mid-spring, people are feeling some improvements. So we'll see. So here are my priorities. It's those I just mentioned. We are gonna, for the IRB, we're gonna put in a new platform in the spring. We're looking for the Manning director. So let me tell you about OSP. So, It's in a few slides. I can jump there in a second. Lab archives. How many of you have heard about lab archives? Yeah, okay, so lab archives is one mechanism that we have to be in compliance with the NIH requirements. So NIH requires that, and this started in January of 23. Any grant that was submitted, all those new awards, any data generated have to be open access, freely available. So Lab Archives was adopted by the National Cancer Institute to help with that. So many of the top academic medical universities have adopted Lab Archives, so this is really specific for that group of people, although anyone can use it. And so it's a way to catalog your research data, and there's an easy way to put a link in peer-reviewed manuscripts that will take the reader to that data file. So more to come on that. We can talk about that. Wanted to introduce Kristen Schwendiger. She's the new Rio, so she's doing a ton of work already, trying to help with education, research misconduct, accidental plagiarism. She's had a lot of interactions with students and some forums. So stay tuned for more there. Gwen Bushi, I mentioned, is our research communications director, so stay tuned for added communications. How we're engaging with the research community are listed here. We started these open forums, and this is our way to engage the community. So we've had one on HRPP where we provided some content, so roles and responsibilities of that team and how the researchers can interact with that team and have a Q&A time to share challenges. So we've done that one, we've done research integrity, we've done compliance and security. And November 20th is OSP pre-award. So I encourage you to come and listen. You can do it hybrid, you can do it in person. And then we had our first Advancing Discoveries and Driving Innovation. Again, this is reaching out to the community. It was an after-work social event and an open mic event where faculty could talk about their research and find collaborators. It was tremendously fun. We had over 70 colleagues show up at the School of Data Science. Okay, yes.
So it seems like there's one more open forum to come.
We're going to do a ton. That's just what's scheduled down.
On the
Yes.
calendar currently.
Yes.
How do I get there and how do I tell my faculty about it?
Yeah, so we have put it out in our newsletters, we've sent out emails, but if you're not reaching it, we've got to figure out another way to communicate that. You're not getting it? Okay, that is such good feedback for me.
Just for right now today, the office of VPR or something like that, if I go there, like how do I find it?
Yeah, it is on our website, so how about, for now, I do this, I'll send to Jim the link so that he can circulate it, so that you can circulate, but this is really important feedback, thank you.
I'd just like to jump in a little in terms of thinking about how do we define the research community? I consider myself as somebody who does research, but my research does not fit any of those categories.
So which categories?
So, I do historical research. I work on the history of architecture, history of cities.
Yes, fantastic.
But I think often, and I know a lot of what your job is and needs to be, is dealing with the kind of big money things. But as somebody in a kind of thing that only ever gets small money, historically, I have felt very sidelined by the university and not treated as a researcher or having my research understood as important. So I just wanted to let you know that the people in the humanities are researchers too.
For sure. So yes, thank you for saying that. Any research is important research, and I value every kind of research, and I will support that. What I was just saying is the structure of the office, right? But that's not everything that we do. So I appreciate that. I will love to come hear from your faculty. I heard at the AI conference that Ian mentioned that was going on with Virginia Tech the last day and a half. I heard Mona.
Yeah.
No, Mona. Fazra? No.
Kazra.
Kazra.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, I was just over the moon by listening to her talk about her research. And so all research is important, and research that's internally funded. It's not all about sponsored programs. That is something that my office must track. So that's what all those staff are, but all research is important. And I didn't put this on the slide, but just so you know, soon after the first of the year, we're going to put out a call. My office is going to sponsor symposia on any research topic. So we are going to invite our colleagues to just pitch a topic. So the goal is to have a symposium every month on all kinds of topics. And so the vision of this is to have 2 co-chairs of the symposia so that the experts are the ones who are planning it, but the office will help with the logistics and help with the cost. So stay tuned for that. So you should apply.
Professor Patel has her hand raised.
Quick suggestion, since this is stuff I've worked on as well, is, since you don't actually know about many of us who do major archival research, I'll be working with the Sri Lankan government next year on their fiscal plan. It would be worth, my suggestion is, just have a workshop, literally have a bunch of people from arts and sciences who do archival research, who do different kinds of research, to train you,
Yes.
And the second thing is, and actually pay us for that training. And the second thing is, these symposia, are they just partly, in order to do a symposium, you can't, if I want a bunch of people I want to work with inside and outside the institution, most of the people I want to work with, like if I want to call the Prime Minister of Sri Lanka, I need a 2-year, who would love to be here and be talking about research she does, science. So she would, so can we ask for, organizing a symposium 2 years down the line? If you don't answer it now, just let us know.
Yes, and I thank you for that question, and I should clarify, these symposia are for an internal audience, us talking to us. And so so that kind of invite, we'll have to figure out another mechanism for that. But what I'm thinking about is, because what I'm hearing is that most of us don't know what else is going on outside our spheres. And so this is meant to be open symposia where we invite the whole enterprise to come and hear about us and our collective strengths and areas or new collaboration. So, but thanks for that. A couple more things because I'm running out of time. We have a new dashboard if you want to follow what the funding looks like. It has proposals, it has expenditures, it has what the funding is year to date. It's on the OSP website. You can see where these arrows are here, where the dashboard is. So this is just a screenshot. So the red line is year to date, and the top of the green bar is the total funding from previous years over the last 10 years. So if you want to look at this, it's there. It will help us keep track of what's going on. It has expenditures and proposal numbers and who has funded us. So investment in research. So this goes back to your point, Peter. You were the one, Matthew, okay, I was, yeah, about OSP. So yes, OSP. So I am a consumer of these services myself, and I, as a researcher, I don't want to have to be worrying about if my grant's going to get submitted or the delays or that. So before I got here, there was a lot of investment made. So there's been somewhere between 8 to 12 people that have been hired on the staff. I think the biggest problem is this integration of Huron with Workday. So Workday, so at MUSC, the MUSC switched to Workday too. Same problems with Workday. So it's here, it's there, it's at WashU, it's at UPenn. So we're working on that, and hopefully we'll feel some improvement. So a lot of investment there. We've hired people, we're fixing our processes, we're trying to communicate better. Stuart Craig has announced that he's going to step out of his role in August, so we are about to launch a search for a new director of OSP, an associate vice president for research. And we've hired a consultant who's had over 30 years of experience running OSP offices. I worked with her at UAB. And she ran the office at UAB and saw her improve the processes. She now is retired from these kind of roles and she works for Attain Partners. So we brought her in and she's just finished a really nice report for us, showing us where all the gaps are, where we need to fix. IRB, and I know I'm out of time, so we're making improvements in IRB. And again, it's a process problem. You know, sometimes it's people, sometimes it's a process, and sometimes it's both. And so in this case, it's both not enough people and our processes are broken. So we're working hard on those. And I'm just gonna stop with, because I'm out of time, creating our collective legacy. I've spent my career at public institutions. I love the mission of public institutions. And I think we all have a responsibility. We have a responsibility in a way at a public institution that maybe faculty at private institutions don't have. And I just encourage all of us to think about what will our legacy be? How are we serving the community? How are we creating new knowledge? How are we training the next generation? And what do we want people to say about us in 20, 30, 50 years from now? And collaboration is how that happens. And I want to hear from you. I want to come back. I want you to see me as your partner. I am a faculty member. I do what you do. I don't know everything. So please educate me. I want to learn. I want to listen. I want to celebrate all research, research that goes on in the School of Architecture and everywhere. So thank you for listening, and I can't wait to come back and talk with you again.
Thank you very much. Our next item is Maite Brandt-Pierce. She's going to describe and discuss with you the COACHE survey.
Do we have time for a quick question?
Yes, go ahead.
Set you up?
We're setting up.
Okay.
Lori.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
Yes.
hi Lori, Bob Hurowski, Physics. Thanks for coming to the RTS meeting the other month.
Yes.
So I wanted to bring something up which I may have touched on in that last meeting, but I think it's going to continue to affect many of us.
Okay.
And, you know, in addition to our problems, as I mentioned, the agencies have problems.
Yes.
And we're often operating at risk.
Yes.
So to give an example, I had an award which started last February. It ends this February, and the funding didn't come through until, a couple weeks ago. Okay, now in a situation like that, it's a new project and, we found a way around it. But there are cases of continuing grants, or renewals. And as an example, last year, our renewal date was April 1st. Okay, the paperwork didn't get processed until sometime in September, just before the end of the fiscal year. And as a matter of fact, the agencies didn't even start sending information about whether they were renewing the grants until late July, and for some universities into August, September. So almost 6 months beyond the end date, they're saying, do what you think is best. Now, obviously, if you shut it down, you're done. It takes a decade to rebuild expertise. Right? We can't shut it down.
Yes.
But this creates a nightmare at the department level. And they've been trying to figure out how to cover us in these situations, where to put things. And if you have a mature research program, at least in physics, they've been saying, well, we'll just park it on if you have some, overhead return account, some F&A, we'll park it there and hopefully it'll work out. But then it takes months and months and months and months in order to, realign the books.
Yes.
And it's a disaster at every level, such that, I've got an end date coming up at the end of March, and it's essentially impossible. Maybe in a couple weeks, I'll be able to start to figure out how to project myself, to the end. But because of all the pile-on effects, it's really difficult.
I totally understand what you're saying.
Right,
Yes.
so if we could get some coordinated business process that was somehow considered acceptable and legal to help make this a little bit easier because we're all living in this environment.
Yes.
And, at the administrative level, at the PI level, it's taking
I
a
hear ya.
ridiculous amount of time.
Yes,
Maybe we need
yes,
to
thank
move
you.
to the next.
Thank you.
Okay.
Maite?
Let's continue.
Yeah.
Jim, can we flip, because I'm gonna miss picking up
Oh,
my son
sure,
from
sure,
school,
sure.
and I only need a minute and she needs 20. So, hi, everybody, I'm Scott Ballenger, from the law school. I just want to talk for a second about free expression and academic freedom. The Provost's office would love to sort of co-sponsor with the Senate this year, and I think this means next semester at this point, a series of joint programming on issues of free expression and academic freedom. Sort of in broad strokes, we'd like to create opportunities for deep engagement with not just the controversies of the hour, but also big picture questions that we don't necessarily talk about all of the time. Thinking about issues like the lines and distinctions between free speech as a constitutional matter and academic freedom principles in a university environment. Does academic freedom come with any obligations? How do the free expression rights of students and faculty interact? What's the balance between academic freedom and free expression and the need to generate a sort of welcoming environment for all of us? How should we think about the line between what faculty do as scholars and what they do as citizens? What's the university's role in defending all of us when we come under outside attack? Things like that. I've gotten some great suggestions from the executive committee already, but I would love suggestions from all of you, and even better, anybody who wants to work with me on this project. The provost has given us a generous budget to bring in people from outside. So please send me thoughts and contact me if you want to talk about anything. It's Scott Ballenger at the law school, JSB 9N. Easy to find.
Thank you very much, Scott.
Thank you.
Maite?
And thank you, Maite.
So Maite, we still need time at the end.
All right, I'll
8
speed
minutes or
through.
so, if you can leave us 8 minutes.
Well, I could just tell you, the website is live and then just, All right, thank you for this time, I really appreciate it. So what is COACHE? COACHE is an externally administered survey that asks a bunch of questions of faculty about your job satisfaction. We've participated about every 4 years for a long time. And the goal, because the survey is the same year to year and offered to all institutions of higher ed, we can compare our results longitudinally and also to other institutions. So we put together a small committee to help us administer the survey. Again, these slides are on the website. To get to the website, you could just Google UVA Provost COACHE with an E, and you land right on it. And I'll send it to Jim and he can share it with you. So we get the information from COACHE and we can analyze it and get a sense of the faculty's perception, and we share it with the faculty so you understand each other's perceptions, and we can figure out what are areas where we can improve, and then we put together an action plan. And because COACHE provides us these numerical metrics, we can track our performance from over time. So what did we do to address what we learned in 2020? Now, in 2020, the survey was administered across the time when we went home for the pandemic. So the situation was a little different, but we did learn a lot, and we engaged in all of these initiatives that are really intended to address some of what we learned through COACHE, like the Strategic Research Infrastructure Initiative, to build out our research resources, the Center Mid-Career Fellows Program to reward mid-career faculty with our kind of rising stars. We've enhanced the dual career program that is a very well-funded program that helps also create positions for faculty spouses. We are continue to work on the Equitable Service Workload Initiative. We've launched mentoring programs, we did the salary study, all of these you know about new endowed professorships, and we are, HR is expanding the childcare services. So I talked about comparators. So what are the comparators? And COACHE uses two. One is a set of 85 institutions that have taken the COACHE survey that look more or less like us. And it's really more or less because we're one of the higher ranked of those 85. And so to get a closer comparative set, they also allow us to pick 5 institutions. And these are the institutions that we picked. So it's from that list, right? So people ask me, why didn't you pick Michigan? I was like, oh, Michigan wasn't on the list, right? So these are the ones that that we picked. And there's a little bit of overlap on the ones that we picked last time in 2020, but there's some new ones too because of who was on the list. So who participated? So who was invited is all faculty except for the School of Medicine. They have their own survey that they participate in, and not faculty who've been here less than a year, and not upper administrators like deans and people like me. So a total of 707 people participated, and you'll see here the disaggregation list. So how does COACHE disaggregate the faculty in their reporting? So tenured, pre-tenured, non-tenured track, tenured full professor, tenured associate professor, men, women, white, faculty of color, Asian/Asian American, and underrepresented minority. So you can look at how all of these groups answered the questions, of course, statistically. So to start with the big picture, we're doing fine when we compare ourselves to both the peers and the cohorts. So the top 3 lines are us compared to the peers and cohorts as the department as a place to work. So how happy we are with our department. And the bottom 3 are how happy we are with the institution. So as you can see, around 15% of our faculty are dissatisfied, and around, I guess, 70% of our faculty are satisfied. And I'm going fast again. All of this is on the website. So, and all of the results are also on the website. We're being completely transparent with everything. You can just look everything up. One of the things that COACHE does is they give a list of these 25, what they call aspects about working at UVA, and they ask the faculty, pick the 2 that you like best and the 2 that you think are worst about working here. And 10% or more of the respondents said the best aspects about working at UVA were quality of colleagues, quality of undergraduate students, geographic location, quality of graduate students, academic freedom / support for colleagues, which was tied. And the most frequent responses for worse, so 10% or more of the faculty who answered said too much service, too many assignments, compensation, lack of support for research / creative work, and cost of living were the worst aspects of working at UVA. And again, 10%, right, of the 707. So it's interesting to see how these have changed over time. And what we see is the best aspects have not changed. It's been quality of undergraduate students the whole time. But the worst aspects have changed. Compensation is always on the list, but the other, and actually compensation is on the list of our 5 peers, and 80 out of 85 of the cohort. Compensation is one of the worst aspects. So surprise, surprise, right?
Try to get a job someplace else.
The other worst aspect has changed. So it's gone from lack of support for research to protection from service to lack of diversity, and now service has resurfaced as the biggest issue. And compensation is now second. You answer, I don't know.
Workday, that's what came in there. That is what happened there, because that just takes so much energy. It's so frustrating, and I lend so much money to the university for such long periods of time.
So this is for the service aspect.
I mean, I'm just saying, my guess of why too much service went up is partly because we spend a lot of time fighting Workday.
So the other way that COACHE collects information is through this really long list of Likert questions. And those questions have been organized into these 9 themes. And these 9 themes have further been separated into these sub-themes. And I've got, the colors kind of got messed up. I know I didn't choose purple. Green are where we're strong. So you'll see we're strong in facilities and work resources, senior leadership, and the quality of the department. And in red, where we are weak, are personal and family policies, collaboration mentoring, tenure expectations, and the nature of work service. So this is through those Likert questions, the highlights where we're strong and weak compared to the 5 peers, right? The universities are most like us. This is not the colors I chose. I can promise you that. Okay.
You lost all the words in the middle.
I don't, okay, so I really don't want you to know what's in that. Oh dear, okay. I can remember what they are. So this is basically taking all of those elements that we saw here that I didn't talk about and put them either in the amongst the lowest 30 in the cohort, that's the 85, in the middle of the cohort, or in the top of the cohort. So you can look at, in fact, what's most interesting is what's in the weakest: mentoring, service, the clarity of tenure expectations, and personal and family policies. And where we're strong are things like teaching and research in general, facilities for work, promotion to full, we're strong, senior leadership, many different aspects of governance, departmental engagement, and departmental quality. Notice that there's a whole set of questions in COACHE that relates to you, the Faculty Senate. Then what we look at is what are the experiences of our underrepresented minority faculty, because it's a little different. So for instance, in the bottom 30 of the cohort, health and retirement benefits, as well as the quality of the tenure policies themselves have become, are in the weaker of compared to the cohort. So their experiences are a little different. So I'm almost done. So this is a comparison of us over time. And if you look at the dotted line in the middle, that's kind of like the average. So you can see that we're staying pretty constant. We've gone down a tiny bit, but we're pretty constant. And of interest to you will be the light blue line, that faculty leadership, that is you. So you went, it wasn't measured before 2016, but between 2016 and 2020, it went down a little bit, and you've remained flat since 2020, which is good news. All right, so we generate reports for how the faculty in each school responded to all of these questions, and we share that information with the deans of each school, and many of them are going to reach out to you with some of that data and engage in discussions as to how you felt in your school were strengths and weaknesses, both of your school and the university. Institutional dissemination, here I am talking to Faculty Senate, so that's on the slide. There's a website. I encourage you to go into the website because it has all of this information, including the slide deck, a narrated version of the slide deck, the full data, and then just the summary. So
the middle section is revealed.
Yes.
The middle section is revealed.
It's in the one we got sent.
Yes, yes. And there, none of what we learned was really a surprise, right? I mean, we listen to faculty a lot. I listen to faculty a lot. And so there's things that we've already started and things that are current initiatives to address some of these, like we are revising the P&T policy. We have started mentoring programs. We're moving forward with the research strategic research infrastructure initiative and funding some of these initiatives already. And we have launched a Center for Faculty Wellbeing Development. Jenny Knight talked to you about that last month. And we are hiring a Director of Faculty Awards of Recognition to help with that. And that's it. That's as fast as I could go, Jim.
Super job.
And reach out to me with
Andy?
questions. Yes.
Maite, can you talk a little bit about the deans see the data, but the average faculty member doesn't see the data? Is that
No,
a
you
dean level
see-
decision?
Yeah, you see the
Disaggregated data by
You
school.
see the data that COACHE provides about the whole university.
Right.
And we share with deans the data of their faculty.
Right.
And we encourage them to share with their faculty, but I can't send the school faculty their data.
So we could talk to our deans to say, look, we know you have these conversations with Maite. We would like you to have these conversations with us as the faculty so that we know what we all think in
Exactly.
this.
What I'm telling the deans is you need to gather your faculty and have these dialogues about what their experiences are in your school and how you can help. Because mentoring, frankly, it's much more what's happening in the departments that's an issue than what's happening institutionally. We can do only what we can do. So those conversations need to happen. And so we're gonna have a set of brainstorming lunches about these topics that are an issue institutionally, and we hope many of you will come. But you really need to reach out to your deans and say, hey, we heard about this. Is this also true in my school? I want to help. I want to do something. I want to tell you what I think. I know that faculty don't like to tell their deans what they think. So yeah, get engaged, because we see COACHE as kind of the beginning of a conversation and not like the end.
Great point. Thank you. So we have Scott Ballenger just spoke, and we have 7 standing committees. And will a committee chair interrupt me if we're, the RTS committee has been meeting with Lori McMahon.
Is there time for a question for Maite, or do we?
Well,
need to
look,
move
we're
on?
gonna pass 4 PM, so that's what the problem is. We got quite a lot to
Plus, I
finish. What do you wanna do?
Senator, it's about the non-tenured, high response for non-tenured faculty, but the results are not, they seem very oriented to the,
yes.
yeah, to the tenured. That's,
So the non-tenured track faculty in COACHE is not disaggregated. It's all as one, and that's because it's comparative across institutions. And so many institutions list their non-tenured faculty just as lecturers. They have the same questions for all institutions, and so they just go to the least common denominator. Because we have the data in IRA under an IRB, that's accidental, by the way, we can disaggregate that. So we can say, these are AGF at different ranks and how they feel.
yes.
And yeah, we're happy to do that.
That would
Yeah,
be great to
yeah.
know.
Yes.
Thank you. The Academic Affairs Committee, you all circulated a proposal that does not need a Senate, but it was a Hispanic linguistics program, a new program.
Certificate.
Anything else to say? It's in
No,
good shape.
so they've made their changes, and we haven't heard anything from the Senate in terms of a problem.
Good.
So
And
that was
Brad
nice.
and Alan, thank you for all you're doing in the Recruitment, Retirement and Welfare Committee. The Policy Committee has a box for comments on draft policies. So Lisa's not able to be here today, but they've been very busy in their routine review of policies and then dealing with some extraordinary related to the protests, and she'll update you in December. And the DEI Committee has been meeting and active, and I think Eric might be online, but Alicia is in her department faculty meeting. Anyone want to make a comment from that committee? The Grievance Committee has 1 or more cases ongoing, and we're going to need a chair for the spring. So it might come from within the committee, but anyone could also offer that because Juliet will be on leave in the spring. The Finance Committee, you want to say?
Adam Daniel's going to be giving a report to us before the next Faculty Senate meeting.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. thank you, Jim Savage. The RTS committee has been meeting with Lori
Yeah, we've had one
regularly,
meeting.
making good progress. And Aaron has volunteered to work on refreshing the bylaws and any other handbook issues, constitution and bylaws. So please speak with Aaron or the executive council. He'll
have
update us in
suggestions,
December.
we want to help, please do. I will note that nobody ever objects when I present bylaw changes. This is gonna be
Thank you.
buckle up.
Aaron, thank you for volunteering to do that. We just discussed AAC issues with the President Ryan. The Faculty Senate of Virginia is hosting a meeting with the Virginia legislators, and it's coming January 9th. So I'm going to send you these slides. If you want to be part of that, this is an opportunity. They said this is underutilized, and I believe it's in Richmond that this occurs.
It is.
And then, let's see. We already, religious accommodations will keeping the simmering. The Brian Wright is going to be the chair, represent on the Dean Search Committee for Commerce. Parking and Transportation Committee we've appointed Jessica Sewell and Ben Bennett, and there's an alternate, Natasha. She's not in the Senate, but asked to be named to them, which we did. And then in December, we'll see about AI. Michael Kennedy, would you help us with the nominating committee?
Thanks, Jim. Quickly, and there will be free drinks to everyone who positively responds to this report at the bar. No, that's outrageous. How dare you? The most time sensitive is we must, at the January meeting, hear from at least 3 candidates to become the faculty representative to the Board of Visitors. You may recall Aaron's very popular amendment from a couple years ago. The board wants a panel of 3 names. They expect that the present chair will be one of those names, should that chair be willing and interested. We need 2 more people to be considered for this role. I would be very, very thankful if you would be willing to put yourself forward. It does not need to be a faculty senator, but please consider it. I also need a nominating committee who will join me in getting names. So if you're willing to be on the nominating committee, please let me know. If you're willing to put your name forward to be considered as the Board of Visitors rep, please let me know. And we must do that in January so we can forward the slate. We'll have a vote. We'll hear candidate statements at our January meeting. We'll forward those names and we'll know in the spring what the board decides to do. The next position is less time sensitive, but even more important. This position, in all likelihood, will end up being the faculty rep down the road. Listen, we've had School of Ed, Engineering, McIntyre, but we haven't had anybody from the college since I've been on the Senate, and this is my 6th year. That's an observation and a call to my colleagues. That doesn't mean it needs to be. There's obviously lots of schools, lots of high quality folks, but please consider this. It is, I won't even bullshit you, it is a ton of work, and the things you'll find yourself doing, you truly can't believe sometimes. And yet, 258 days from the conclusion of this tour for me, I find myself changed for the better. I've had a chance to meet so many of you and interact with you in extraordinarily meaningful ways and develop relationships that I never developed as a regular senator, and I certainly didn't develop as a regular faculty member. Even if you're new, you've never served on EXCO, that's not a barrier. We're looking for you. I'll be at the bar later and I can visit with you privately as well. Please consider it. You can of course ask Jim, you can of course ask Jeri, but think about it, please. And there's all kinds of fun stuff you can see on the list of things you get to do as well, including $10,000 in a discretionary account. That's not bad. The next thing, Anaco's served us so well and will continue to do so, right? On the on the Faculty Senate of Virginia. We are allowed up to 3 senators given our size. If you are interested, it's only 2 or 3 meetings a year. They're on Saturday mornings, which is not ideally placed, but at least it's not during the work week. They're often interesting. I thought the one that we just had was really interesting and worth being at, talking with our colleagues. So if you're interested in something light that would put you more into leadership, talk to me about this and talk to Anaco about this. We have 2 forthcoming vacancies for at-large EXCO. Sue Saliba's term, which she was completing for Sarah Ware, is concluding at the end of this academic year, as is the seat filled by Jim Savage, who was replacing Jeri's at-large seat when she came into leadership. So we will have a vote. We need at least 2 names, but it would be great to have a large slate of folks considering EXCO. This is a 3-year regular term. If you have less than 3 years to be on EXCO, it's in the bylaws, I checked. Yeah, I checked. It's 3. If you have, because I wasn't sure either. If you have less than 3 years, come anyway. And if you get reelected, keep going. If you don't, we'll replace you when your term expires. Please consider this. This is a great way to get to know the Senate better than being a regular senator. So I hope to hear your ideas about that. And that was my report. So thank you. Let me know. Time sensitive is the BOV rep names and then Cheryl. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mike. So several of the senators are affiliates of the Contemplative Sciences Center, and there was a tragic sudden death of the inspiration for that center this week, Monday, hiking with students at Humpback Rocks. So this is international news. His obituary was in the New York Times. So please be thinking of your colleagues in the Contemplative Sciences and the family of this gentleman, Sharath Joyce. And then my own department chair passed away suddenly 2 weeks ago. We had a service on Saturday in the Cabell Hall. It was old Cabell Hall. It was filled 850 attendees, and it moved to the Colonnade Club afterwards. So thank you for thinking of Bill and his family. And we're headed to Bavaro Hall. If you have a kid's birthday party, there's some donuts to take with you. And we have to think about a motion before we adjourn. Is anyone? Thank you. Thank you very much for participating today, and see you anytime. Thank you.